Hello again, YBH. Today we're going to have a real multimedia class because I'm going to put into the lesson not just this video but also some papers which you can use the first one to follow along with me now as I'm going to talk about it, and the second one will be I'm going to assign to you to summarize it for today. It's first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. It's a 2-page sheet. It's long, only 5 paragraphs today. And you'll know you get to the end of the summarizing of that sheet, the second sheet. When you get to the exclamation point, I'll come back to that later. So the first thing I wanted to start with is the first sheet, which has on top, Who Takes Revenge for Us, 1899. And if you recall that yesterday I said that it's a matter of sheer speculation on my part, complete conjecture, utter hypothesis, without any basis in fact or evidence to say that the Jews volunteered in large numbers for the Spanish-American War, because until Germany came on the scene and was the fatherland against which we fought, public enemy number one for the Jewish people was Spain. And I did a little research last night, and lo and behold, I was right. My conjecture was correct. And here you have, translated from the sheet which you have there, Who Takes Revenge for Us, that sheet is the translation of a Yiddish pamphlet which was put out by Theodore Roosevelt's campaign when he campaigned successfully to become governor of New York in 1899. And at that time, governors of New York served for only 1 year at a time. There was an election for governor every single year, which probably made for pretty lousy government. But in any event, you're going to hear a little bit about his campaign and his stint as governor a little bit later in this class. But first, let's go through this pamphlet, which I'm so thrilled about because it proves my point. Who Takes Revenge for Us, 1899. Every respectable candidate. Now remember, this is written in Yiddish, so it can appeal to the Yiddish-speaking Jews on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, who nevertheless voted overwhelmingly for Roosevelt's opponent, the Democrat who lost. But the Jews have been voting Democrat for a long, long time. So, Who Takes Revenge for Us, 1899. Every respectable citizen, every good American, and every true Jew, right? Every Emes Yid, we could probably say there. Yeder Emes Yid will vote for the Republican gubernatorial candidate Theodore Roosevelt. As citizens, we are concerned, to the typo there, I didn't type it up, it's not my vote, with the welfare of their city and state. As Jews, we direct this message to you. We have also taken our text, the verses in our Psalms. Oh, you murderous Babylonia! May it be done to you what you have done to us. Asher Shalom Loch, doesn't say this here, but it's a translation. Asher Shalom Loch es Gemulech Asher Gamalt Lanu. Babylonia sinned against the Jewish people. But how small is Babylonia's sins in comparison with the untold crimes which Spain committed against us? Babylonia came as an enemy and took us into exile. Spain did much worse. In Spain, our ancestors, from the early part of, from shortly after Churban Bayis Sheni until the 1300s, 1200s, 1300s, and said good useful citizens. They made Spain rich. Spain's treasury outfitted the ships which discovered America and gave Spain the power which made her a mighty nation. How did Spain reward them? Spain took away everything their Jews had, and she sent her Jews to the dungeons of the Inquisition and the fires of the Auto da Fe. That's why they burned Jews at the stake. When Jews left Spain, they were murdered on the road as sheep are slaughtered by wolves. Those who remained as disguised Christians were slowly persecuted. The cruelty and tyranny which Spain set loose did not remain in its own land. Spain brought it to the New World. Brazil, Mexico, Cuba, Santiago, where Theodore Roosevelt met the Spanish face to face, they were long stayed by Spain's murderous and bestial methods. We're talking about 406 years after they were kicked out of Spain. But, okay, where Theodore Roosevelt met the Spanish face to face, long stayed, etc. Until Theodore Roosevelt charged up San Juan Hill, there still rang in our ears the cries and screams of Spain's brutality. The long-felt Jewish desire to see Spain fall was finally fulfilled. Nikmas Hashem B'Sfarad. The Republican campaign through its president gave word that Spain should move out of the New World, and the Republican gubernatorial candidate for New York State, Theodore Roosevelt, was one of the chief instruments of this late war. He worked day and night, Tag und Nacht, till he worked out all the plans for our Navy, and when Admirals Dewey Sampson and Schley chased the enemy, Theodore Roosevelt, at his own expense, organized a regiment of Rough Riders and went to the battlefield to meet the foe. Under Roosevelt's command, there were many Jewish Rough Riders. Roosevelt was like a brother to them. He recommended them to the president for promotions and sang their praises to the world. Spain now lies punished and beaten for all her sins. But the party which brought Spain her defeat and the man who fought against her now stand before the citizens of the state and ask whether they are satisfied with their work. The decision about President Kinley and the late war with Spain now lies now in the hands of the citizens of this state in this present election. Every vote for the colonel of the Rough Riders is approval of Mr. McKinley. By the way, I saw yesterday some of you didn't know how to spell colonel properly, and of course not, because like any good English word, it is not spelled it all the way it sounds. That C-O-L-O-N-E-L is pronounced colonel. The grade in the Army between major and general, is approval of Mr. McKinley and the war. Every vote for Roosevelt's opponent, who was also McKinley's opponent, is a vote for Spain, for Generals Weyler and Blanco, the Spanish generals. It should say here like a vote for Homan. Can any Jew afford to vote against Theodore Roosevelt and thereby express his disapproval of the war against Spain? Can any Jew deny the joy of his nation in the entire world? Vote for Theodore Roosevelt. Vote to express your approval of Spain's defeat. Jewish members of the Republican State Committee. Abram J. Karp, I believe, was the translator. Translated this to English. I could not find the real Yiddish. I apologize for all those of you whose Yiddish is phenomenal. I would have been able to understand the original Yiddish. Not sure many of us there are here. Now, in the other handout which you have here, basically you have a summary of a lot of different aspects of Theodore Roosevelt's connection to the Jewish people, which we'll go through slowly, not tonight, all of them. Again, if you take a look at this sheet, which is the handout which you're going to see on in your assignment. So you don't have to move backwards when you face the camera. Anyway. Anyway, well, hopefully you'll figure it out. So somewhere in one of these paragraphs here, over here, there's an exclamation mark. See that? So summarize from here to exclamation mark. Now for the rest of it for a different time. Now for the rest of this evening, I'm going to show this morning, whenever you're watching this, I'm going to show you a clip of a person who goes around the country impersonating Theodore Roosevelt, giving talks about him, and I took a selection of his talk, the part which is relevant to us for now, about his episodes being a leader of the Rough Riders, organizing the Rough Riders, and then all the way up to his being nominated for the vice presidency of the United States in the elections to take place in 1900. Please watch that, summarize that for the rest of this class, and to look forward to seeing you virtually tomorrow. By the way, I understand that it is in the plans of IBH to have the enrichment clubs, and I hope to be giving enrichment clubs, and I look to that will be actually obviously Zoom as opposed to pre-recorded video, and I look forward to interacting directly with you at that time. Enjoy the rest of your day after you finish the rest of the video.
Hell with Spain, remember the Maine. I was working behind the scenes trying to get myself to become a politician, or excuse me, to a soldier. Well, what happened is when I went to apply, McKinley had blocked my way. So I went to my friends in Congress and I said, you know what, our army's not big enough. If we think we're going to go to Spain, or to Cuba, excuse me, with our army, we don't have enough people. We're going to need our own people. And I think I know just the friends that we need. My cowboys back in the Dakotas. The men who knew how to ride a horse. We needed a cavalry unit, and we needed the very best people in the entire world. And I knew just the men. So I convinced them that we were going to go. By the time war broke out, we had started something called the United States Volunteer Cavalry. My good friend Leonard Wood was a colonel, and I was lieutenant colonel underneath him. And I was ready to go. We were mustered in a place called San Antonio, Texas. I was sitting at the Menger Hotel signing up more cowboys as they came in to join us. Over 1,200 men were ready to go to battle. As we got the notification, we were told we had 3 days to get to Florida to take the ship out to Cuba. The trains came and we loaded our men and our horses and we began the chug across. Young ladies met us with milk pails and sandwiches. And we were encouraged as we zipped across. Well, we got just outside of Tampa, only 10 miles, and I said, let's stop here and we'll continue to muster. And then when we get the notification, we can very easily take the train down. Well, one night before we were supposed to go, a quartermaster came and, Mr. Roosevelt, if you have the Rough Riders available, they need to be down by the ships by 6 a.m. If they're not there, you will not get to go to battle. Well, of course, we immediately got our men together. We put them on the railroad tracks waiting for the train to come. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., no train. Finally, at 3:30, another quartermaster comes up and says, Mr. Roosevelt, I'm afraid I gave you the wrong place. You need to be at this railroad track 2 miles away. And we moved our entire group. 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m., I see the train coming. But it's going the wrong direction. And when it comes up to us, I realize that it's a coal train going north. And I stand in front of the train with my pistol and I commandeer it and we put the men onto the train and we back the train all the way back to Tampa. By the time we get to Tampa, there are 60,000 troops with no idea of where they're supposed to go or what ships they're supposed to be on. I sent Colonel Wood to go find us a ship, and I mustered my men, and we waited for the Yucatan to come in. As soon as they dropped the gangway, I put my men aboard. Everyone was scrambling, trying to figure out how to get on. And I stood at the end with a pistol and said, this is only for the Rough Riders. The rest of you figure out your own ride. And soon we began. We were only halfway out, 45 miles, when all of a sudden we realized that the ship was overloaded, that it could not handle all the horses and the men. And the only thing we could do was push the horses overboard. By the time we got to Cuba, there were only 4 horses left. My men had no longer been cavalry units. They were now foot soldiers. And as we got there, my 2 horses and Colonel Wood's 2 horses jumped into the water, and mine immediately, one of them drowned. The other one made it to shore, and we began what became, I call, my crowded hour. You see, before we left, I had found out that our Army was planning on giving us all the cast-offs from the Civil War. We were going to be using the smoke-powdered rifles called Springfields, and I couldn't stand to see my men sitting in a spot where they shot a puff of smoke and the enemy knew exactly where they were. And so I purchased with my good friend Mr. Tiffany rifles for all of my men, exactly what the Army was using. And then I found out that they were going to be putting my men in wool uniforms from the Civil War, and I said, my God, man, they'll melt. This is a tropical environment. And so I took the old Indian War shirts and I had canvas pants and a canvas coat made so that my men were cooler. At the bottom of something called Kettle Hill, up at the top there was a molasses factory wrapped in barbed wire, and there were Spaniards with German machine guns, hydraulic, that were shooting down at us. We were at the bottom with my men cranking Gatling guns. I looked at my poor men and they were being massacred. And I said, men, we need to go. Follow me. And up the hill we went. By the time we got to the top, I had bullets shooting through me. I had one graze my wrist. I climbed off of my horse, Little Texas, and I cut my way through the barbed wire, and we took that molasses factory, and we cheered, and we looked across, and we saw that San Juan Hill, just the next hill over, was fighting the same battle that we had just done, and we went down our hill, and we went up to San Juan and took that. And then we moved our men to the beaches to wait for the rescue ships to come. And as we were there, my men began to die of yellow fever, scarlet fever, of malaria. And I told the people in Washington, we need to get my men home right away. They're dying. And they said, Roosevelt, you can come whenever you want. You're an officer. And I said, I will not leave my men. And we all left together, and we were quarantined in a place called Long Island, New York. And it was there that the Republican Party came to me and said, Mr. Roosevelt, we need your help. I needed a job, so I was willing to listen. And here's what they told me. You know, our Republican governor has seemed to somehow absconded with $1 million, and we don't believe he's going to get reelected. And I said, I think you do have a problem. And they said, we have a very, very strong Democratic candidate. We need you to run for the Republican ticket. And I said, well, I might be interested. What are the terms? And they said, you do exactly what we say. I said, those aren't very good terms. And they said, if you need a job, they're excellent terms. So I did. I was elected, not by a landslide, by a mere 1,000 votes, and I was now governor of New York. But I had made a promise to the machine that I would do exactly what they told me to do. And when it got to the insurance commissioner, the man that they wanted me to take to have the job was as crooked as a dog's hind leg. And I said, I will not do it. And they decided it was time to get rid of Theodore Roosevelt. And they had an excellent plan. You know, there's one good way to get rid of a politician. If you never want to hear from a politician again, nominate them to be vice president. That was exactly their strategy. They said, Mr. Roosevelt, we believe that you would make an excellent vice president, and McKinley's vice president has passed away, and so we need you to go. Even McKinley came to me and said, Theodore, I think we need you. And so I decided to go to the Republican convention.